a special guest today, like I thought, Stuart. So it might just be the two of us. It's
That's
looking like that's okay. That'll work, right? Yeah. So in Arizona, though, you guys had cold too.
oh yeah, it's been abnormally chilly the last few weeks. We had a ton of rain, and which was good. We needed it, and the high was mid 50s, and now it's starting to turn around, and it's still not super warm, but I think the high is almost 70 today, which is nice. But I don't feel nothing makes me feel good about telling you that based on where you're at. So let's not even have this conversation because it's a lose-lose for me.
Yeah. Yep, that 70 degrees sounds really good. We're kind of a weird group here, where I'm at, that if we gain another 20 from where we're at now, you'd see people out in shorts and flip-flops at 45 to 50. High school kids, that's what you see them coming home from school in. They maybe have a sweatshirt on, but no winter coats. And so we're a strange group, maybe a little bit here.
That's
When
okay.
you get into the cold. So thanks everybody for joining us today. This is the last week in mortgage today. I am Faith Howard Mooney, the VP of Member Engagement here at the Mortgage Collaborative. And with me today, I have Stuart Crawford, who is the CEO and founder of Bison Ventures in Scottsdale, Arizona. Thanks for doing this with me, Stuart.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And if anybody wants like really cool things to do or look at from your website perspective, I have to say, one of the things I love your website. Um, and the fact that you call yourselves a herd and you have fun things about your team on your website is very appealing. So as you go in and check out who they are as a company, make note of they're kind of cool people. Um, so yeah. So why don't you share a little bit about who Bison Ventures is?
Sure. So I've been in the business over 20 years. I've been doing this ever since I got out of college. So, like most of us, I didn't grow up wanting to be a mortgage person. I fell into it, and here I am, never getting out now. But so I've been doing this my whole career for good or bad. And I started Bison. We launched in March 1st of 2022. So even though it's a new company, we have a seasoned workforce of a team that I've been working with for a long time, many of them a decade plus. And so we're coming up on our 2-year anniversary this March. So we're glad that we survived launch, we survived startup, we survived, probably I joke to people, I don't think I could have picked a worse day to start a mortgage company in the history of mankind, but that's the way it goes for me. So but, we got through last year. We actually ended up growing, which is great. I'm really proud of my whole group. And so we're a small IMB. We started the company. I think we had 12 employees. Now we've got 32. And so we 95% of our transactions we control from A to Z, and we fund them on our own lines, and just like any correspondent would. So that's the fast version of who Bison is.
Yeah, and I mean, I always say that in environments like the one that we're in, well, maybe you didn't plan for it to be this way. It's like smart people that have their stuff together take advantage sometimes of the type of market that we're in right now. And so it's obvious that you've been able to do that. So kudos to you and your team.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on in our wonderful industry. I love the fact too, I'm going to go back. I love the fact too that you also said, I always say mortgage is in your blood. You never leave. Some people try to. You've just come out and said you're not leaving.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. I'm not smart enough to do anything else. When I somehow convinced one of my best friends I grew up with, who's now my partner and COO and CFO, to come start a mortgage business with me, I said, "Look, man, I'm not smart enough to do anything but mortgages. So if we're going to start a company, it needs to be a mortgage company."
That is absolutely positively fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about kind of what's happened in the last week in some of the things that have been publicized in the mortgage industry. So trigger leads. we've talked about them a ton here within the TMC family. I think that we all would agree that they can be very abusive to people that aren't expecting them to happen, which most consumers kind of don't understand it. So we just kind of love, there are now two bills um, out there, and would just kind of, love your take as, as an owner of a company on them, and what you think the best solution is that will come about out of these two bills.
Yeah, and in all honesty, I don't know every detail of these two bills, but I think it's pretty straightforward, right? And the trigger leads are just nasty practice, and there's really nothing good about it. And to your point, when you say that, if the consumer's not expecting it, that's bad. Well, even consumers that do expect it, because our team, anytime we see something like this, we make sure to incorporate it into our processes and systems, because as we all know, the best service comes from being proactive and getting in front of things before the consumer does or can think to, right? So now all of our people on the phones, when they're pulling credit, they'll say, hey, do you want to do an opt-out process? And this is going to should reduce the amount of calls you're going to get. But point being is, we have those conversations and they know it's coming. And we've still had clients go, oh my gosh, I still got 30 phone calls, but at least I didn't get 150, right? And I'm sure you've heard some of the stories I can't even believe how many phone calls and messages they're getting in the first 48 hours. So, but again, it's good practice for everybody to have their salespeople do that up front on the loan application side, because it is a little bit easier of a blow, at least if they know it's coming, even if you try to mitigate it. And they appreciate the fact that you're trying to help by walking them through the opt-out process. But in terms of, the desired outcome of these bills, I think is frankly obvious. That it just shouldn't be allowed, period. I mean, I guess if there's one trigger lead that I think is okay, and it's just my opinion, is the ones that we all have when our past clients pull a mortgage inquiry and we get the trigger saying, hey, Sarah just pulled her credit, you might want to reach out to her. I think there's nothing wrong with that, and I feel we've done a good job of weaving that verbiage into those phone calls, so it's not like this creepy, oh, we're watching you and we watch your every step, right? Because that's how I'd feel if someone made that phone call to me. It's more of a, hey, A, we want to make sure that someone pulled your credit because it could be fraud. And B, if it was a mortgage inquiry, we're a resource for you. And we'd love to just, get in front of you and see if we can put a strategy together or a second opinion, et cetera. So I think it's received in a good way, because we're just authentically trying to let them know we're just trying to help you, right? We're not trying to sell you anything. So I'm fine with those, but anything above and beyond that, it should be eradicated from the planet.
Bills are slightly different. I know one of them goes down the path of what you just said, that if they were a prior customer, I'm not sure what all of the differences of those two bills are. I do know, however, and thank you for whoever shared in the Q&A with me, if you're a member of MAA, MBA sent out information this week on how you could share your support for those, and with, I believe, some additional detail. I know I saw it fly by, it's still in my email box, but showing the differences between those two bills and kind of the stance that maybe the MBA has taken on them. I'm glad that they've gotten to this point. The CFPB, I know everybody probably saw this earlier this month, came out with, while they share sympathy, they don't believe that it's within their authority to come in and speak to this, even though it is related to the consumer experience. The most abusive places I've seen it is with probably, or heard about it, is with older people. That it's like not a process that many people have been through a lot of times in their life, and now they're getting 150 some calls and just not sure. They're thinking it's coming from their lender member, those types of things. So I do think that if you don't get out in front of it, there is some sentiment out there in the industry that your lender member that you're working with shared this information, which of course isn't what anybody on this call would want to have happen. So fantastic. One of the things I saw in the news this last week related to, I love information from the Urban Institute because it's always very factual. And so Obviously, affordable lending and some of those other issues have really come into play this year. And for many of our lender members in our network, that's always a type of business that they're trying to attract. But the Urban Institute came out and made a statement this last week. Over the next 20 years, 70% of the net new homeowners that are in the market are going to be Latino. And I mean, that's like a huge chunk of business there that I'm just wondering, whether as a company or other people in the chat, please pop in. I mean, because of that, have you begun looking at the diversity of your workforce, especially from a language and documentation standpoint, to have things done potentially in Spanish? So we just love your take on that, Stuart, if you guys have done anything organizationally, and if you've seen, more of an influx of business outside of the English language.
So I'll start with the last question. We haven't necessarily seen an influx in business, in foreign languages. Keep in mind too, we're in Arizona, so the Hispanic community and those types of consumers have always, to a degree, been part of the makeup here. So we've always been in this ecosystem of it would be beneficial to have a bilingual Spanish speaking loan officer, operational person. And those are very hot commodities, for lack of a better way to say it. And because as we all know, it's not always easiest to find great people, but now you're trying to find great people that also have this somewhat unique skill set in this space. So, it's always on our mind. But I will just say back to what we've seen, we don't see a huge influx of that business, but I also think that's because we haven't necessarily been the niche for that business, right? There are some other lenders in our market that is their niche business. And we've talked to some of them as far as trying to recruit or learn. And that's 90% of what they get. So in all fairness, they'd be better to ask as far as if they're seeing an influx in that or not. I just wouldn't know that answer.
Yeah. And I'm going to break away from our conversation for just a little minute today, because we do have a special guest who has joined us. David Kittle, who is our CEO, is joining us just for a second here, because from March 24th to 26th, we and a lot of the TMC family are going to be invading his turf. So I'm going to take a shot at it in Louisville.
Close. Very good. We're going to allow you to come in, Faith.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. So you want to share, kind of some of our plans there with the people that are on our call today, and why they should come and visit you in your hometown.
Oh, well, great. Well, thanks for having me on here quick. I'm sorry I was a tad bit late, and apologize for the voice. It's kind of rough today, but I'm glad to be on here with everybody, and good to see everybody that's on here. We're having our spring conference here in Louisville, Kentucky, my hometown. It's the 24th through the 26th. If you come in a day early, we're going to have a really nice, for our lender members, a really nice bourbon tour to a couple of distilleries on Saturday, and then start our conference on Sunday. We've got the normal wonderful guests that we have at every one of our conference, from Julia Gorman at HUD and Sandra Thompson from FHFA, who are obviously people you want to come listen to. Our collab labs, which are, I guess, the focal point of what TMC is all about. Our members get together and have collaboration together. We have great breakout sessions. We have a reception at the Louisville Slugger Museum, because we make the baseball bats here in Louisville. And it's just a great town to come and collaborate in to the Midwest. And I'm looking forward, if you want to join us, please join us here at Louisville at the end of next month.
A tidbit for everyone here is that Mr. Kittle is also, the day before our conference start, he will be celebrating a birthday. So we will be celebrating a birthday with him in his hometown this year. So
well, thank you for that. Yes, I will be.
Appreciate you, David. Thanks for joining us today and sharing that information with everybody. Of course, we're hoping that you will come see us and we will be seeing you in person. Oh,
Good.
and also we'll be auctioning off a bottle of Pappy for a really great cause as well while there. So
Yeah, one of my own bottles of Pappy Van Winkle. We're gonna auction one of those off and then give it to a charity, and one of the things we do inside TMC. So thanks for reminding me of that. Yeah, but
yeah,
thanks for having me today, Faith.
it was great to see your face. I hope your voice gets back to normal.
Me too. Thank you.
We'll see you soon, David. Thanks. Um, back to the last weekend mortgage today. So let's move on and talk a little bit, Stuart, about home building. You live in a market that's been hot for, I feel like, a long time. I don't know how much of that is comprised of home building. The National Association of Home Builders has, they believe that 2024 is going to look more positive for home builders. So share with me a little bit about what happens in Scottsdale related to home building and what your market looks like there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing to keep in mind is, Phoenix Metro is a very large area, geographically. Maricopa County, which consists of Phoenix, Scottsdale, all these cities, Chandler, Gilbert, Tempe, I can go on and on. It's a huge, huge area. So it's a little bit easier when you say Scottsdale. If you were to talk about new builds in Scottsdale, doesn't necessarily exist. You're talking about infill spec homes, people taking old properties and turning them over one by one. When I think, and new build can be that, right? And there's a lot of that activity in Scottsdale. I think one of the things that is the most shocking I heard recently from a really good agent here in town, he said that there was upwards of 40 or 50 $10 million homes under construction right now in town, right? Not just Scottsdale. And I have another good friend who owns a company called Silverleaf Realty, which is a kind of prominent area up in North Scottsdale that only has so many homes. And these are homes that sell for, I'm guessing on the low end, 5 million. Some of them are selling for 20, 30 million. They just sold 16 acres for 7 million of just land. And I just saw him yesterday, and it's so interesting because those types of sales, which I know are sort of like so out of our ecosystem in some way, they haven't slowed down. They did for a little bit, but they just constantly have demand. And a lot of these things are cash. And, a lot of us sit there and go, where is all this money coming from? And a lot of these are second and third homes too. So Phoenix is an interesting animal in that we have a lot of vacation people that come here. We have a lot of people that retire here, which is of course good for housing. But we also have we've got over 5 million people. I think the last time I checked, we were the fourth biggest city in the country as far as population, maybe fifth. And so the good news is we have a lot of demand and our migration is huge. We have a lot of people moving here every day. We've got a lot of companies coming here for, big corporations like the Taiwanese semiconductor plant, which maybe you've read about, maybe you haven't, but they were slated to build a $40 billion semi-chip plant about 30 minutes north of where I'm sitting. And that's a big deal. Intel is expanding theirs. Supposedly, once both of those factories come online, just those two in the same county are going to put America back on the map for up against other parts of the world for semiconductor chip production, which is crazy. So it's this weird market, Faith, because there's all of this demand and all these people coming here, but we are plagued by affordability, right? I mean, I've been here for 20 plus years. When I see what these first-time home buyers are up against, I just feel bad for them. And so then they have to go to the outskirts of the county, which is where I was getting at, where most of the production new builds are, right? The Pulte's, the KB's, the Toll Brothers. And even those starter homes are, 500,000-600,000, which is just crazy. But it is the market. So new builds are coming back. But a lot of the feedback I've heard is they are still having trouble selling. Obviously, the rate environment is still a challenge. What I'm seeing in our area is there's definitely the land grab is going on again. So we're seeing bidding wars to pick up big parcels of land all on the outskirts of town to be ready to continue to build. But I don't necessarily know if those production builders are ready to put shovels in the ground in that dirt yet. I think they're playing the chess game to say, we know Phoenix is going to grow. There's no way it can't. We don't know when this is going to start changing, but we want to be the ones that own the land when it does, so we can start building the houses. It's just, again, my opinion on it, whether it's right or wrong.
Spot on. Fourth largest US metro in the latest census. Yeah. And battling water, energy resources, affordability kind of came out in that as well. So
yeah,
yep.
I mean, they're talking about, I don't know if any of you have been to, called the Scottsdale area, which is much bigger than people think. And you probably just saw us in the news for the Phoenix Open and the circus that was last week. Yep. But it's, you look around and there's massive resorts, there's palm trees, there's green grass everywhere. We're in the middle of the desert. None of that stuff is by nature. So we use a lot of water. So that is a big thing that I know our realtor groups talk about. There's a lot of classes with like water experts on what's this going to look like. There's already been, rumblings and rumors that with any build from here on out, you can only have grass in your backyard. Your front yard has to be fake grass or rock. So some of those little things might start coming. And so it could be an interesting, landscape over the next 10 years.
Yeah, that's interesting that those things come into play, potentially with new builds, where new rules come into play related to like how or where you can use your water, I guess. You hit it on spot in talking about affordability a little bit. National Association of Home Builders came out with a stat that only 37.7% of homes are within the reach for median income earners. So when you're talking about somebody that is, going into it from a first-time home buyer perspective, I think it was last week or the week before on the show, we were talking about affordability a lot. And to afford a median priced home, you need to make $114,000 and some odd change in annual income per year. And that to me was just like over $100,000 for a median home, was just kind of shocking. And then you add in the scarcity. I know that your metro area has had a shortage of houses for several years at least, where it was really impacting people being able to buy and purchase. So you were kind of a little bit more ahead of the curve, I think, on that initially just out of the gate.
Yeah, correct. And we've got some, like anywhere, the location, right? The good old realtor saying the 3 L's. And, there are parts of town here, very desirable neighborhoods that nothing is soft. I mean, it's still a fight to, as soon as it comes on the market, it's gone. We just, in one of these specific areas, I think it was most expensive lot sale ever. It was a 1 acre lot that went for $5 million a lot.
Oh,
and, a lot of these, like I said, are cash. We have people coming from California, not even looking at the homes. So again, in some ways it's good because it gives us this maybe false hope that we're like protected and we have something underneath us. But the other way, it's not good. You've got families that want to be in these areas and it's just, there's no way they can do it. And I mean, I have friends that I know could buy X house 2 years ago at a 4% rate, let's call it. That same house, even with the price increase not happening, which did happen at that, 7% rate, it's like it pushes the affordability out. And these are people that do well, so it's, I don't know how Phoenix is going to navigate this, to be honest with you. I just, I don't see prices coming down and, I hope we don't become this place that used to be a value and now we're this expensive, beast that's unaffordable, which, it may end up being that way, though. It's hard to say.
I'd be curious that in the markets where you have, where people are gobbling up land and things, for your home builders out there, have you seen, one of the things that this article talked about is construction job openings. Have you seen still a huge demand for people in the labor industry as far as creating homes? And what do you think that that looks like. The construction sector is saying that they have 450,000 positions that are still unfilled.
That's a big metric. I mean, I'm not an expert in this by any means, but I would say that everybody I know that's a builder, whether it's custom builder, building for clients, spec builders, friends that own masonry and steel companies that cater to all the builders, right? Within my network, every single one of them still says it's hard to find good work. I haven't heard anybody change that tune. That's been going on for years. Furthermore, and this isn't necessarily a direct answer to the question, Faith, is, there's something to be said about construction prices now being the new normal, right? And, a couple of years ago, we all had the sticker shock of, the cost to build a home was almost double, if not more, if anybody had gone through that or did the research.
Yeah, the lumber effect on a couple of years ago was huge.
Yeah, and there's a lot of misconception out there because this is something I actually follow, and everyone says, "Oh, well, lumber came way down." It really didn't. It did come down. Don't get me wrong, but when you're building a house and lumber comes back down 30%, but then your doors, which I know doesn't make sense because that's wood, but believe me, I know this. The door package, the window package, all go up another 15% when things are supposed to be coming down. Yeah. The cost to build your house didn't really get any cheaper, so you got to look at every component that goes into building a house, not just one material. And we have a good friend who's building a house right now, just to give you guys an example. And they got a phone call from their builder saying, if we don't put the deposit on the door package in the next week, the suppliers called us and said they're taking prices up 20% across the board on everybody. And this is a national supplier. And they're going, I don't understand, Stuart. I thought prices were supposed to come down. And everyone I know that's a builder's like, Stuart, this is the new normal. I'm telling you, it's too bad. But, even if it does come down, it's not coming back down 50%. And believe me, I'm not trying to make black and white definitive statements, guys. I have no idea what's going to happen, but this is just sort of the sentiment when you talk to the people that do that for a living.
Same here in our metro area. It became a joke within my family that every door that I wanted to go on a property in building it new was $800, and they ranged from $760 to $875 indoors. And so it kind of became a standing joke. The other thing was appliances back then, which I don't think they're having as much of a struggle with in new housing, but my dishwasher got moved to 2 other houses so they could close on them and then move back into mine a week later. And so things like that were happening. I don't know if any of that is really happening anymore, but it definitely is interesting to follow it and watch it in the places that you have a lot of new construction going in, for sure. Inventory is a huge issue, kind of everywhere between the pandemic and everything going on. The whole lock-in effect of people that are, maybe more in my age and looking to downsize, but rates aren't quite where they're at. There was an article out this last week. It was actually published, I think, by the NBA. Millennials have the children, but boomers have the houses. Going to a larger cost, smaller house, wanting to downsize, but the dollars just don't make sense for a lot of people right there. Any predictions, insight on how that will play out in the market that you're in currently? I think 2040 was listed as a turning point of when they thought boomers or people of retirement age, there would be this huge influx. Have you seen anything published on that in your market, or any predictions on what you think could happen there?
Honest answer, not really, but I'm also not looking for it. And I'm sure if I was out looking for those articles in my market, I could probably find some. I find it hard to look out that far. I try to look at what's in front of us immediately and what we think's in front of us in the next 2 to 3 years. And even that, of course, is just a gamble game, and use that information to make the decisions for the next move for the company and for our people. And just try not to get caught up too much in the future. Not saying that it's not a good thing to look at that, but I haven't seen any of that fake, to be honest with you. And I think for this is, anyone who knows me knows I'm not a doom and gloom person. I've never been that way. That being said, though, I try really hard, my leadership team and I, to set really realistic expectations with our employees and with our partners. And we have all seen the predictions of rates in the last year, right? Oh, rates are going to come down in May because of the shelter indicators. Well, that didn't happen, right? Then everybody coming into the end of last year was, well, rates are going to come down in the first 2 quarters of next year because the Fed's pausing and, let's have another New Year's Eve party. When I hear those things, I get nervous because I know the general public is grabbing it with everything they've got and they're believing it most of the time. So I'm sitting here going, I wish I could tell you guys that I think rates are going to come down in the next 2 quarters. I don't. And I hope I'm wrong. But I'm trying to brace for protecting and building a moat around our people. And it could be a year. It could be more. So I don't know. It's, as you all know, doing it this long, the last few years have been some of the hardest ever to predict because a lot of the moves don't make sense and don't have a why behind them. And when that happens, that markets are just simply emotional. And that's very hard to predict.
I agree with that for sure. This has been the most unusual. It's not a typical cycle that those of us that have been in for a long time have experienced in the past. So all bets are off the table. You kind of can't really predict in the same way that maybe you could trend things out before. I 100% believe that. I think you probably haven't heard some of the things too about baby boomers retiring. You capture a lot of those people in your market because you have a lot of retirement. It's a very appealing place to be for people who are either, from my world and become snowbirds during the winter. So you capture some of that environment just naturally in the market that you are in. So
We do, but the part that makes me nervous is where I think we're slowly becoming a little bit expensive for a lot of that group. And I think that I'm already hearing other states coming up where, hey, we're, and I won't name all the states, but, that's kind of sad. It's nice to have all those people come retire here and hang out. But yeah, you're right. We've naturally, that's been a part of, the Sun Belt in general for a decade or not more.
Yeah, so true. Well, I appreciate we're out of time today, which it goes by so fast. I always love a good conversation with you. We met recently at one of our conferences that you were at. You're such a great contributor to the group, have such a strong knowledge base of the mortgage industry. And I appreciate you doing this with me today. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. And thanks for letting Bison be a part of the TMC family. We're newbies, so we'll take all the knowledge we can get from all these smart people. And I'll see you in Kentucky.
Yes, look forward to seeing you in 6 weeks.
Crazy.
About 6 weeks out. See you in Kentucky. Appreciate your feedback, Stuart. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Appreciate you guys. Bye.